Hello, this is the fourth part of the Information Timeline series, and today we're going to be talking about academic journal articles. Again, hello, my name is Kim Luby, and I am here because academic journal articles are really confusing. And if you ever have questions, you can find me at Atkins Library and at kluby@uncc.edu. Our agenda for today, first we're going to talk about some background on academic journal articles. Second, we're going to talk about information that can be found in journal articles. Third, we'll be talking about using this information. And then fourth, the ever fun part, finding these journal articles. So first off, background on academic journal articles. So what is an academic journal article? I'm going to do my best to visualize how and what these are so that you can understand how to use them. So first question, when was the first academic journal? 1665. They are older than you might think. So the first one was a French journal, and it was the obituaries of famous men, church history, and legal reports. And around the same time, there was an English journal coming out in England that was on the philosophical transactions of the Royal Society. But the first fully peer-reviewed journal was the Medical Essays and Observations in 1733. So this is going to reflect what the current journal articles are like with that peer review process, and we'll be talking about that later. So please do not mind this busy slide. I'm going to walk you through it. So if you look at the top with these blue arrows, these are academic journal articles. So, or excuse me, these are academic journals and they hold articles. So each of these journals holds about 10 or so articles each. So on the top left, this is the cover of what a journal article, or excuse me, what a journal would look like. You can see they have all different titles. This is that part of your citation that you're probably a little confused by, that I have an article, what is this journal they're talking about? This is the journal. And then on the right, you'll see these in libraries that is just a bunch of, looks like colorful bound volumes. Rather than have all of these individual journals on the left, we put them all together into a larger book, essentially, on the right. And so you don't have to just look through these tiny things because they come in like a kind of like a magazine. And if you put them on a bookshelf, they're really floppy, they're going to fall over. So we bind them together in volumes so they last longer. Second, on the left, you can see how now they are organized in databases. And these databases are owned by these larger companies. And this is where it gets really confusing between what is an article, what is a journal, and why are they in these databases? What are they doing in these databases? So if you look down on the bottom left, you'll see probably ones you might recognize: JSTOR, ProQuest, EBSCO. So these are the companies that own the databases. If you think about it, it's kind of like if you play video games, how you have Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, and they all kind of do the same thing, but they all have specific games that appear on within like each console that aren't in others. So it's the same idea with these databases. They all hold these journals that have these journal articles in them, but unlike those gaming consoles, sometimes these can talk to each other and they will have similar articles within each database. It just depends on what journals are owned in the company. Anyway, this is getting a lot more in-depth than you need to know. I just want you to understand what is a database. It holds all of these journals that have the articles, but it's pretty unlikely that you'll be searching for a specific journal unless your professor tells you to. So you're just finding the articles. Oh, we have a cat again. This is Stella. Say hi, Stella. Who knows what she's gonna do? We'll just let her look out the window. So on the bottom right is the library homepage. So you can search for all of these articles and these journals within the database through the library homepage. So the library purchases these databases, or not really purchases, we subscribe to them so that you have access to these academic articles that are, remember, again, within those journals, all found in these databases, provided to you through the library. And by using the library homepage and through that search box, you're bypassing all of the paywalls that's covering these parts 1 and 2, because they are all really, really expensive. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So who reads and writes these articles? So basically scholars and scholars. Scholars write these journal articles and scholars are generally the ones that read them. So how are these articles different from the articles that I read online? You keep saying the word article, but I just read like a BuzzFeed article. How is that different from these journal articles? And why do you keep dropping journal or academic? So let me explain a little bit more. So first off, academic journal articles, which I just keep calling articles here, go through a very strict process to check for accuracy and the quality of the research before the publication. Most of these articles are just presenting on research, so they go through really strict review processes. And these articles very rarely make solid claims. Instead, they want to show what the research found and any limitations that are in the study. So oftentimes in the news, you'll see a headline that says like, coffee cures cancer. But in the actual research article, the journal article that you read, it'll say that we found that within this one group of people, drinking more coffee helped reduce the levels of cancer compared to this other group, but we're not really sure if that was the only thing. That's just what we were looking at. So they won't say definitively, they'll just say this is what we maybe found. Maybe not, there needs to be more research. And finally, they cost money. That is the main reason you won't find them just on the open web. I can't really go into the whole process of how much money they cost and why, but they just do. So that's why you only find them generally through universities or really large companies like a hospital system, a law firm, or like a bank or a really large, well-to-do business. So how are these articles made? You keep talking about how great they are, or how different they are from an online article. How are they different? So they go through a lot of steps. So first off, you have to design your study. Then it has to go through IRB approval. And what the IRB is, it's the Institutional Review Board. And the IRB exists for human studies. This is only if your article, or excuse me, if your research involves humans. They review it just to make sure that everything is good practices, it's ethical, the humans are not going to be explicitly harmed in a way that does not benefit the research. It's just having other humans look over to make sure what you're doing is okay. And then next, you complete the study, you do all of the research, and then it's time to write up everything you found. So you write that article, then you submit it to a journal. And these journals are all different types of subjects. So you'll submit it to a journal that covers the subject or the research of the study that you did. Also going to be very likely your background research that you normally do. And then next, experts within the same field are going to peer review the article. So that's what we mean by peer review. It's being reviewed by other experts within your field or your peers. And what they're looking for is to make sure that you had a large enough sample size, that your conclusions match what you found in the research, that the research was done well, and that everything just follows what should be in the article. And we'll talk about later what's in an article. Finally, you might have to do some edits. There might be some back and forth with your editor from the journal and with your peers looking over it, making sure everything in there is of high quality. Finally, you're going to keep repeating that process, and then it's time to publish. And these journals tend to come out at different times throughout the year. So one journal might come out 4 times a year, one journal might come out twice a year, one journal maybe might come out monthly. So you might have to wait another few months before the next journal is published. So from beginning to end, this can take quite a few years. We're going to talk about that next. So how long does it take? So if you follow that just doing the study and doing all the writing, that can take 1 to 5 years. The peer review process can take, again, up to a year, just depending on what your peers want to change within your article. And then finally, the publication, you may still have to wait a few more months once you're finally done for that journal article to be published and to come out. So why is this important to know? So if you're researching something that has taken place recently, so say something political, health, a natural disaster, a recent social movement, it's likely that there just won't be any articles on it yet because of this how much time it takes, this 1 to 5 years for it to come out. So if you're researching something that's happened within the last year, there just might not be enough time passed to have quality research on that yet within these articles. So if that happens to you, all you need to do is find a similar example to yours that happened a while ago. So a really easy example that I always use is hurricanes. So let's say you want to research a hurricane that's happened in the last year. You're finding that, man, there's just not any academic articles out on it yet. Think of a more famous hurricane that you could research, one that's happened in the last 10 years. Katrina is usually the one that comes to mind. There's Hurricane Andrew from the 90s, and probably now enough time has passed that you could grab some of the ones that happened in the last 3 to 4 years. So you just want to think of the most well-known example of your broader topic and then look for information on that, because it's very likely there's going to be a lot of articles on that. So next, why can't I find these on the open web? Well, first off, they are expensive. Remember we talked about how expensive these articles are? The next reason is that their main customers tend to be universities and academic libraries. So academic libraries are found on universities. So it just keeps the articles and the information found within this same group over and over. It's not being spread out to the wider audience, because if you think about it, how many of you really want to read really in-depth research on something that's just unrelated to you? It is for scholars, by scholars, so it makes sense it's going to stay within a university. So with this cost, I want you to imagine that one article costs $50. So let's say now that one journal has 10 articles. So that journal is published now 4 times a year. So $50 an article times 10 articles in a journal times 4 times a year is $2,000. And that's just for one journal. So the library subscribes to thousands and thousands of journals, and our budget tends to be around $1 million just to have access. And also, rather than subscribing to just the individual journal, we get them in those databases that I talked about earlier, because they're cheaper and we can get subscriptions, and all of that information is housed in one place rather than trying to keep track of all of those individual journals. So next up on our agenda is to talk about what information is found within a journal article. So what information can I find? Spoiler, it's a little bit dry, but again, that is the point. So there are 2 main types of academic journal articles. First off, there are science articles, and these tend to have a lot of data. They'll have research methodologies, statistical analysis, and they follow a very specific format. When you're looking for articles, it's very likely that you're going to see this format. The other type are humanities articles. So humanities articles tend to have a lot more text. They're broken up into larger sections related to a theme, and they are used more in history, literature, etc., any subject area or major, as you would know it, falls under the humanities. So what exactly information am I going to find in these articles? So first off, you're going to find research studies, lots and lots of research studies. Academic journal articles present the results of research studies that are conducted by academics and scholars. And again, their articles are going to follow that same formula, and they're going to look really similar. If you really want to know more about this thing, ask your professors what research they do, and they'll tell you, and they can probably show you some articles that they have published, and they'll help you understand what information goes into these. Next off, data. They're going to have so much data, lots of statistics, lots of information. And finally, they're going to be incredibly specific. These articles are going to be about a very specific topic, population, location, and often time period. So remember I talked about how they follow a particular formula. We're going to talk about that now. So first off, you're going to see an introduction. That one is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be followed by a literature review, often called a lit review. So this takes the article's research and places it within a broader scholarly conversation, and it's going to reference previous research on the subject. Next up is going to be methodology. This is going to describe the study size, survey questions, who was involved, and all other details. And then finally, after that, you're going to have the results. This will showcase all the results that were found. It's going to be either in lots of text or using lots of charts and graphs. This will be followed by your discussion and conclusion. So this is going to summarize the results, make any final conclusions. It's also going to be the place that suggests where more research needs to be done. It'll very likely also reference back some sources that were talked about in the lit review in the beginning of the article. And then the last thing you're going to find are references. So this is the best place to look for more articles related to your research. It's a very easy place to find other articles related to your broader topic rather than having to keep search for more. So the harder thing, why are these articles so hard to read? So first off, they are just presenting information. That is the main thing that they are doing. So that means that they're going to be full of jargon, acronyms, and vocabulary that's unique to that field of study. And the focus here is to describe and discuss the research, which can be very tedious to read. So also do not worry that you could probably ask your professor if they enjoy reading articles in their field, if it's hard, and it's if they're honest, and some probably really enjoy it. But if you want to ask me as a librarian, I read library research. I find them really hard to read sometimes. And that's also because you're expected to have prior knowledge, meaning that since they're written by scholars for scholars, the articles expect that their readers already have a background in that subject area, so they're not going to explain a lot of things. So if you're in an early level course into your subject or into your discipline and you're really struggling through these articles, it's probably because you haven't researched and studied it for 5, 10, 15, 20 more years. So be kind to yourself if you're struggling through these. It's totally fine. They are very difficult to read, and that's why I really want to explain this for you. So next up on our agenda is using the information that you have found in these articles. So how can I use it? What you're going to need to do is very likely just make connections. So integrating academic articles into your research, oftentimes you're going to have to make lots of connections, meaning that since academic articles are incredibly specific, it's very likely that you're going to have to find an article that is similar to your topic of interest and then connect it to your topic. Meaning that if you are researching, let's say, homeless experience in Charlotte and you're just not finding any articles related to Charlotte specifically, what you're going to want to do is look for other cities that have research in them, other cities also in the South. So look for maybe Atlanta, look for Memphis or Nashville. I think other cities in the South, some in Florida, Orlando, just anything similar, and then make connections between what is found in that research to what is very likely happening in Charlotte. And then next off, looking at just the data and examples. So lots of these articles are just results of a study and they draw really narrow conclusions. But you can use this data as evidence to support your argument. But what you don't want to do is only look for articles that prove your point. You have to consider all of the evidence out there, which can be really hard to do because it's likely when you start your research, you have an idea of how it will end, but you really want to evaluate all of the research that has been done on that topic. So finally, finding journal articles. So this section is going to have lots of screenshots, so please bear with me, follow along. Again, if you find this to be going way too fast, you are always welcome to pause, come back, and review at your own pace. So how do I find these? Don't worry, it is very easy, and I'm going to walk you through how to do it. But before we get started with searching, why can't I just Google them? Google is so much easier. So you can, actually, you really can. You can look through look for articles through Google Scholar. That is totally fine. But remember when I talked about how expensive they are, you might find on Google Scholar that it does not know that you are a UNC Charlotte student, and it's going to ask you to pay for articles. And that's why using the middle library search box that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to show you again, is allowing you to bypass those paywalls. So if you are on Google Scholar, you find an article you want, it's asking you to pay. Another thing you really simply need to do is just copy paste that article from Google Scholar, the title, and paste it into the library search box in the middle, and hopefully it will find it for you. And again, I want you to never, ever I cannot stress this enough. Pay for an article. The library provides no cost to you access to all of these articles. If you see my curtains moving, it's because I have foster kittens and they're playing. Maybe they will make an appearance during this video. So to find research, you need to start at the library homepage. So this is the library homepage. In the middle, you're going to see this search box, and I've highlighted it in red and put in my search topic, which is homelessness. And this is going to search for everything that we have through the library. So I've highlighted the source types here in red. We have print books, a reference entry, an article. So we'll talk about how to narrow those down, but it's going to look for everything for you. So to narrow down to just peer-reviewed articles, over here on the left, if you look down in the bottom left, you will see I have all of these arrows pointing to peer-reviewed. So this is the box that you will want to check. The next thing that you can do is also narrow down by when it was published. And down here, again on the bottom left, with all of your ways to filter your results, you can change the date, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. Because in the middle, I want you to see just how specific these articles can be. So look at this title: Homelessness and Hepatitis A in a San Diego County from 2016 to 2018. Very specific, right? So if you're finding that you're struggling with finding enough articles, maybe the articles are too specific or they're too broad, what you can do is add more keywords. So with homelessness, there are 3 ways that I can narrow this down or broaden it up, and those are by population, location, and time. So population, I have changed it to, or I could search for LGBT, youths, or adults. Next off, I can search by a location. So I could do Charlotte, I could do southern cities, or just leave it with the USA. And then finally, time. I could look for during the 1990s, the last 5 years, or maybe just a 50-year time frame, 1950 to the year 2000. So I want to show you now that I have narrowed it down to homelessness and LGBT. It's a little cut off, but you can see that up here in the middle in my search box that has followed me to the search results page. Over here on the left, my active filters are peer-reviewed, if you look way far to the left. So now let's look at these titles. So I have the role of institutional placement, family conflict, and homosexuality and homelessness pathways among Latino LGBT youth in New York City. Again, so specific. All right, we gotta see the kittens. Oh, baby, they can help you with your research. Or they can just chew on me while I'm trying to record this video for you. So under this top one in the middle, we have LGBT youth homelessness. What are you going to do about it? And then finally, providing solutions to LGBT homeless youth, lessons from Baltimore's Youth Empowered Society. So remember, very, very specific. So, all right, I found these articles, but how do I actually get to them? You're going to see 2 things from your search results page, either a link that says download PDF, which is here in the middle, or you're going to see something that just says available online and not have that download PDF button, which is down here a little bit lower. So you can click on the download PDF button, that'll just take you straight to the article, or you might have to click through to the second page. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if you want to get an article that does not have that very handy dandy download PDF button, when you open up any search results like this on the library page, it's going to open up the second page. It's going to have a lot more information and some tools with working with that search result. So you want to look here in the middle where it says online access available down here. So it's going to have something that's going to look like nonsense to you. Do you see how it says EBSCOhost APA psych articles? That's just telling you it's coming from the psych articles database and that's run by EBSCO. You don't need to know that. You just need to click on it. So when I clicked on that, it took me to a page that looks like this. When you click on that, it's not always going to look the same. It's taking you to that database. Remember how I talked about the Xbox PlayStation, Nintendo, they all look a little different, but they kind of all do the same thing. So you want to keep that in mind when you're finding research also, that every page look a little different. It's going to look really overwhelming, right? There's so much happening on this page. So the easiest thing you can do is just Control F and type in PDF, and that's going to find the PDF link for you. So on this page, it is over here on the left. Down here, I've got it highlighted in red, and it says PDF full text. When I click on that, it's taking me straight to the article. So to summarize, you want to use the library search because it avoids the paywalls. You want to broaden and narrow your keywords if you're having trouble finding research. And remember that articles can take years to produce, so your articles may not match up perfectly with your topic, but it's very likely that it'll be related and you can make those connections. So if you get stuck anywhere, and I mean anywhere in this process, please ask a librarian. You can email me directly, or you can use the chat on the homepage if you don't feel like coming in to talk to one of us directly. We are also available throughout the day at the front large desk. When you first come into the library, there's someone there who can help you find these articles right at that moment. So thank you for listening. This was a long session. I'm so glad you made it through it. If you have any questions, you can find me at Atkins Library and at kluby@uncc.edu.